Hey guys, today we'll be making minced onion and onion powder from onions that we picked in our garden. Here's one of our drying racks. Has a few onions on it that we've been drying for about a month now. Normally it doesn't take that long to dry these onions out, but it's been so humid here and it's been raining. Just to be safe, we've let them sit out here a little bit longer. These are the onions that I'm going to use to make our onion powder and onion flakes. The other thing you can do with some of the larger onions, after they've dried and cured like this, you can store them in the pantry, just knot them up and hang them, and that way you'll have some fresh onions that you can use as well. But today, these ones are destined to become part of the spices in our pantry, and we use a lot of onion powder and onion flakes. You can make onion soup mix, but I'm going to be dehydrating these. Now, if you have a freeze dryer, you can also freeze dry your onion flakes, but I'm going to use the dehydrator because I think more people have access to dehydrators than freeze dryers, and I'm going to show you a lot of different ways to do it, so follow along. Okay, to start processing the onions, I'm just going to get them cleaned up. I'm going to take any loose skins off and take the stalks and root and all of that off. And I'm just going to clean up the onion, kind of the preliminary clean, just to kind of make it easier to work with these so I don't make a mess in the kitchen. And I'll put the finished onions in here, at least the ones that I'm going to be working with. This stuff here can all go into the compost, and this here will get cleaned up again when I'm ready to slice these up to get them ready to dry. Well, I finished cleaning up our onions. I've got all the loose skins and greens and just all the dirty loose pieces off of our onions. I'm going to go bring this out to our compost. And I know I'll get a little bit of flack on that. Some people say keep onions and onion parts out of your compost. We've been doing it for years. It's just fine. So I'll dump this in our compost. I'll come back and then we'll get started on our onions. Okay, what I'm going to do is start with the smaller ones because I may be able to save some of the bigger ones for our pantry. Or like I said, maybe I'll just chop those up and freeze dry them. But again, that's for another video. I'm going to start with the small ones. I'm going to cut them in half, finish cleaning off some of the dry skin on the onions. I'm just going to put them into this veggie chopper and using a little like French fry cutter, I'm going to chop these up. They're going to shrink when they dehydrate. And this box here, I believe this holds 8 cups. So when this is full, I'm going to say I probably have enough. After they dehydrate, I'm probably going to, in volume, have about 1/4 of that. So I may have anywhere from 2 to 3 cups of dried product. We keep, for instance, our dried onions in these 1/2 pint jars. This is what we do with all of the seasonings that we make. We put them in 1/2 pint jars, and I believe this is 1 cup. So if I make 2 cups of minced onion, that's probably enough for our pantry. One to show, one to go. And then I'll do the same thing. Our powdered onion, you're gonna end up with even less because after it's done being dehydrated and dried, I'm gonna put it into a coffee mill and whip it up into a powder. And you can make either onion salt by adding salt with the onion powder, or like I do, I just keep it as onion powder. If I want to add salt, I can add salt, but that way I have my powder. But I'll probably only get about 1 jar out of 8 cups of chopped onions when it comes to onion powder, because once it's finished being processed, it's really going to be a lot less. So we'll get chopping. We'll start with the small ones. I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut it in half, peel it, chop it, rinse and repeat until I'm done with this bowl. So stay tuned. Well, we got about 20 cups in total. Decided to just slice it all up. Not all of it's going to be used for dehydrating to make onion powder or onion flakes. Some of it's going to be frozen just so it's ready to use. Marilyn's making some salsa, so she's probably going to steal a couple cups of this. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure what we do put in the dehydrator. That way we can compare it with the finished product, and I can give you a ratio. I can say for every 1 cup of fresh, expect a half a cup or a quarter cup of dehydrated. So we'll measure it before we put it in the dehydrator. But one more thing I want to go over too is all of this scrap that we took. We made a video, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago about how we save all of our vegetable scraps because we steam juice these and turn it into vegetable broth, and then we use the scraps from our steam juicer and make vegetable bouillon. So all of this stuff here is going to get bagged in freezer bags, and we'll put it in the freezer until we have enough to make our bouillon. And that's usually around our winter time, because we do a lot of that steaming on our wood stove, because it's going to go all day long. And since the wood stove's going anyway, might as well do all of our long-term stuff where we put a steamer on there and we make a bunch of steam juice stuff, and we'll be making broth. So I'm going to be saving this stuff. We'll measure this out and we'll get it on our dehydrators. I'll also talk about other ways that you could dehydrate too. Okay, today I'm going to be using our Excalibur dehydrator, but you can do this with a Nesco. You can do this with any brand dehydrator. Temperatures and times may vary depending on what you're using. For me, I'm going to set ours at 125 degrees, and it's going to go for 48 hours. But let's measure this out. That way, like I said, I can give you an accurate number. So I'll put 1 cup. I'm going to spread this so that they're not really overlapping. Okay, 2 cups. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I have all of the onions on all of our trays. And then we'll talk about other methods of dehydrating onions. Like I said, you can use other dehydrators. You can use Nesco or Ambiano or any other brand dehydrator. Just load up the trays the way you normally would and stack them onto your dehydrator, and follow whatever the recommended dehydration times and temperatures are. Usually a dehydrator is going to come with a book that explains that. If you don't have a book, you can always find the information on Google. Another method of dehydrating is to just use your oven, whether it's electric or gas. Go ahead and just load things up and use warm if you have that as a setting. Our warm starts at 170 degrees, which is kind of high for dehydrating vegetables. You really don't want to go above 135. So just keep an eye on them. Make sure they're not cooking, they're drying out. You can also open the door to ventilate it. That way things don't stay moist, they're drying out. It's all about air circulation and keeping what you're putting in there warm. I don't really recommend the oven technique myself, but if that's all you've got, go ahead and use it. Another method you can use is our wood cook oven. I know when this is going in the winter, we use it constantly for different things. The bread warmer here at the top, this usually gets to about 110 to 120 degrees, which is perfect, not only for like raising bread or making yogurt, but also for dehydrating. So I would take my onions and just put them in here. And if you have trays, you can stack up multiple pans of onions or peppers or whatever it is you're drying. And this actually works really good. But again, it's difficult to monitor the temperature. And if it gets a little too hot in there, you don't want to cook them. You just want to dry them out. Also, try to keep the door open again to let it evacuate any moisture that may be in there. Well, it's been a few days. The dehydration is done. I checked the dehydrator and everything looks dry. So I'm going to collect those trays, and they really did shrink up quite a bit. Like I said, we started with 20 cups. I put 5 cups per tray, 4 trays. So we'll take a look and see what we've got. It's going to be a lot less. And I'll also show you how I check to make sure they're fully dry by just snapping it. If I can grab one of the bigger pieces and snap it, and it snaps. It doesn't bend or just kind of break. I know it's thoroughly dry all the way through, and I don't want to work with anything that has any moisture in it. So let me grab those trays and we'll see what we have for totals. Well, I grabbed the first tray. I put this is the mat I usually put down when I'm working with pastry or with bread. I put this down because I plan on making a mess. The stuff is going to get everywhere. But this is what I was talking about. I'm going to grab like a large piece and just bend it. And I don't know if you can hear that. They're all very dry. They all crunch and snap when I bend them, these really big pieces. I know the smaller ones are going to be dry. The big ones are the ones that I'm always concerned with, the big fat pieces. But as long as they break up and they don't show any signs of moisture, I'm good with that. I'm going to be measuring this tray, but you can see here, this was 5 cups of onions. I'll measure it properly in a measuring cup, but you know, I'd be surprised if there was maybe 1.5 cups of onions here. We'll get all this measured. I'll give you the numbers, but I just wanted to show you what I meant by making sure they're really, really dry before I put these into a coffee mill and try to mill this up. If there's any moisture, I would just end up making an onion paste, and and I don't want onion paste. So let me get this finished up and I'll get back with you. Okay, I've got all the trays emptied into my measuring cup here. And we averaged about 1.25 cups per tray. I've got a total of 5 cups in here. So from 20 cups to 5 cups. And now I'm gonna make everything even more small. I'm gonna shrink it down a little bit more with my coffee mill. This is the coffee mill I use for processing herbs and spices. I have another one that I use for eggshells. The funny thing is we don't grind our own coffee unless we're making it from, you know, natural stuff. But I do keep the eggshells separate from when I'm doing food for us, just in case. I'm gonna do about a handful at a time, just so I can monitor the consistency. And I'm just gonna load up my coffee mill here, and I'm not trying to grind this into a powder yet. The first batch, we're doing onion flakes. So I'm looking for a small flake, something that you can put on if I'm making bagels or bread, or if I'm making an onion soup, or just want to add it as flavoring into a sauce or a dish. So just smaller pieces, just a little bit smaller than these. Some of these get kind of carried away and they're big and chunky, but if you break them up, they're perfect. And that's what I'm doing with this first round. So let me get my coffee mill set up. Okay, and let's see what we've got. A little bit more. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing is pouring those into this bowl, but I'm going to use a colander, well, a little wire mesh sieve, and that way anything that's too fine is going to fall through, and that's going to be my powdered onion, and any of the larger chunks I'm going to put into this jar here, and that's going to be my minced or chopped onion. And you can see how little there is just from chopping it up. Like I said, I put in a little more than a handful, and I'm left with maybe a tablespoon, and then maybe a tablespoon of powder. So I'm going to keep going through all of this. When I'm finished with all of our onions, I'll bring you back and I'll show you how much we got from 20 cups of freshly chopped onion. Well, all done, grinding and sorting, and I ended up with about 1.25 jars of onion flakes and 1.5 jars of onion powder. The partial jars we're just gonna put on the shelf to use. The 2 full jars, we put silica gel packs in here, and I suck the air out of the jars. That way we can just put these in our pantry and pull them out when we're ready to use them. But it goes to show you, 20 cups of fresh ground onion, and that's what you're looking at right here as far as dried product goes. So when people ask why we plant 200, 300 or more onions every year, I don't eat that many onions. You do eat that many onions. You just don't realize all of the food product that you eat that has onion in it. And because we make all of that ourselves, we use a lot more onion. The salsas, the tomato sauces, all the baking and cooking that we do, a lot of this stuff gets used up. I know I've had people ask, why do we keep our seasonings in such large jars? We use it. But I don't just shake a little bit of salt and pepper on something and call it good. We season our food here. So we do go through a lot of this stuff. This is not excessive. As a matter of fact, this is a bad year for us. We had voles eating our onions for the first time. Never had that before. They were pulling them right into the ground. We had excessive rain this year, so it wasn't a very good onion year for us. But hopefully we got everything that we need, and hopefully this video is helpful for anybody out there who wants to start preserving their own produce. If you have any comments about how you freeze dry or dehydrate onions to be used long term, or how maybe you knot the greens and hang them in your pantry or your root cellar, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And if you like our videos, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.